Shopping for a car will feel more like buying a smartphone. And we just talked about that in the next
Mhm.
few years. You won't just be comparing horsepower, you'll be comparing software updates, date cycles. How long is it taking for the update to happen?
Yeah. How often do they happen?
How often are they happening? And then how long? Okay, everybody is familiar with the term downtime. We
Yep.
don't want downtime with technology.
I know.
So we are just getting into date cycles. That's not even a thing that people are thinking about right now. Okay, we did like the baby step of okay, now we know the vehicle will experience updates. How is the update experience? Is it good? Does it take a long time? Do I have any downtime? Those questions now will start to become part of that feature checklist instead of a shopping checklist. And then you're talking about AI performance. What
Yeah.
are these
Yeah.
AI powered technologies? What's the performance? That might start to be the brand comparison versus what we were doing before as shoppers.
Yeah. It could be. More cars are starting to add different versions of AI in their vehicles.
Get ready for a dynamic episode of Features Talk.
Welcome back to the Features Talk podcast. Yes, where we put the power of vehicle tech back in the hands of drivers, everyday drivers. I am your host, Lisa Bailey, joined by our in-house product specialist and co-host, Luke Verseput. Welcome back, Luke.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yep. We're hitting the ground running again. Another good thing to talk about this week. So in a way, we're kind of doing a follow up to our last conversation that we had.
Mhm.
Um, we uh we got talking about like comparing different brands and kind of how they have differentiated each other. Um, and how certain things have become pretty unanimous across different brands. Other things are still very specific as far as like what they offer, how they market their features and things like that. Um, and we kind of wanted to dig into that because um, we've had a lot of our viewers, like tell us like the information is great, but there's just so many car brands, and they all seem to make competent products. So it can be kind of easy to get lost in that. So we kind of wanted to get more specific on that last week, but this week we're actually talking about how technology, how rising technology, especially with ADAS features like safety systems, are actually raising the bar of all cars. Because of course, as new cars end up being used, they become, surprise, surprise, used cars. And
Exactly.
so and we've talked about off camera. We've talked about how a used car today from several years back is very different than a used car from a decade or two ago. Um, and it's very interesting to see how all this gets raised. Um, and some of the what seemed like high tech features at the time, and even now, are now applicable to used cars. We're no longer in the place where the new car will have a screen. Might not be a touch screen, but it'll have a screen. The
Oh, yeah.
used car will have a cassette player,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so, um,
Mm-hmm.
it's, yeah, that's kind of what we're getting into. It's, we always like to say there's many brands, many choices.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I mean, for a long time, driver assistance features, they were seen as luxury. I mean, honestly, like when you went into the dealer, you know the trim level. That's why they have trim levels. And that
Yeah.
technology was just not part of that standard base trim, that often the everyday person is looking for, whether it's a financial savings, and budgeting in that regard. And so now seeing the evolution, and because it's happening so fast, like you said, Luke, cars are, people want the next best thing. They're trading in these cars, and those cars are being ushered into the used car market. And the newer cars are becoming even more advanced with more, levels of ADAS and increased levels of ADAS. And so it's shaking up things in the car market. It definitely is. And that's the conversation we're having today is how fast is it changing, and really what does that mean for the consumer? So, Luke, We used to walk on the lot, right? And you know
Mhm.
this, and ask about the color, the sunroof, the leather seats. But now,
Yeah, any number of whatever features are important to a specific person, and obviously that varies wildly.
exactly,
What's important to one person won't even cross the mind of someone else.
exactly. But in this particular scenario, because it's tech focused, now
Mhm.
we're asking about software updates and we're
Oh
asking
yeah,
about safety technology, and that conversation is just beginning to start to happen because consumers are starting to understand the privacy behind things. It's a very big topic of some of these technologies, but also just the sheer experience in the car with having the technologies like co-pilot with you and respond to your driving habits. And so, how is this changing how people shop for cars?
yeah. It's that's the amazing thing about it is um it does mean a somewhat different thing for shoppers, and that's why I've been excited to talk about this. Like I said, we kind of went over more of the overall brand comparisons last time, but with that being said, and you can find that, of course, in our list of episodes, using that, what's important to get into is now, okay, now that we talked about that, now let's say now you are the shopper. Now you're actually looking at getting something new. Um, like you said, we say many car brands, many choices, and that can be overwhelming for shoppers, right? So it's important to know going in, like you said, how does it change?
Yeah.
And what I love about this is it goes right in along with your vision of with your features first vision, which is power to the power to the people, the
Mhm.
consumers, right?
Mhm.
Using knowledge.
Yep.
And so yeah, there's some new players, aren't there, as far as like what are these some important things to ask about?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
no longer is it carbureted, is it fuel injected? And
Yes.
so
Yes.
um, and I would say one of the biggest things is software updates.
Mhm.
And I've worked with customers in the public for about 6 years now as a product specialist. And so it's been interesting after all this time. It's just hundreds, if not thousands, of customers now. After working full time nonstop for and just person after person every day. Um, really kind of focusing on that. I mean, you get every question under the sun, and for the rest of my life, I will never have heard every question that can be asked, right?
Right.
Um, and software updates are one of the big ones. We've talked about that before, but this is where it matters for the shopper. I would say, kind of a product specialist pro tip, if you want to call it that. When you're looking at a new car, um, it would be good to it's always good to ask about over-the-air updates,
Hmm.
because that's while it hasn't become unanimous on all cars in the same way that like airbags are unanimous because they're federally mandated, um, and they're not as common as like a lot of safety features like the lane keep assist and blind spot monitoring of the world that we've always mentioned. They're becoming very common.
Yeah.
Over the air updates. Just last night, for my fellow Android users, we especially my fellow Galaxy users, we just got an update to Android, and while it's mostly familiar, it does look different. It changes around a couple of things. There's going to
Mhm.
be slight adjustments in muscle memory for me now. Um, this can happen in cars. Not that they're going to change the way your steering suddenly operates or anything, but um, when you're there, when you're at the dealership, I would advise asking about over-the-air updates. If we're talking about what are things, how is it changing where people shop for cars? Over-the-air updates on new cars will be important because that will let you know in the future, is it going to mean future dealership visits to update the car? Will
Mhm.
the car even be able to be updated, or did they just put the software in there from the factory and that's that?
Mhm.
It just has what it needs to function and that'll be that. Or can it be updated over time with new features? With, meaning new software features, obviously. So that would be an important thing. The other side of that on
Mhm.
the software update thing is used cars. Now,
Mhm.
used cars are most often not going to have over-the-air updates,
Mhm.
um, for two reasons. One, and this is the majority, at least as of right now, talking about this in like early mid 2025. Most of our used cars on the market from several years back are just predating over-the-air automotive updates. So that just it's not going to happen, with the exception of only a few. Most older cars, as of right now, are not going to have it.
Right.
But in the future, if it's a used car that does, well, I shouldn't say if, when, if in the future it's a used car that does have over-the-air updates or did when it was new,
Hmm.
ask the person helping you with the car if it is still receiving them.
Hmm.
And if it's not receiving them, I don't. That's not a reason to not buy a used car. If you're looking for a used car, I would advise go in expecting that over-the-air updates probably are not going to work for you.
Hmm.
Um, but you should then ask, has it received the latest?
Hmm.
Has it received? Because the car is never going to force you to
Right.
update. I've never heard of a car forcing a software upgrade,
Yep.
like in the infotainment system. Ask if the used car has received the latest one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so that would be a some things to look at. Over-the-air updates are just one of them. Um, I mean, there's other things. Like I said, they get updates like a smartphone. This could mean ADAS features. It could mean improvements to fuel economy, especially with EVs. It can mean increases in range. A lot of
Yeah.
EVs, not just Tesla, have received over-the-air updates that have actually slightly improved range because of how the battery interacts with the rest of the systems and everything like that. Um, and so it used to just be about test drives,
Yeah.
right? It was like the right pedal makes it go, the left pedal makes it not go, and it used to be more commonly that the very far left pedal made it go differently
Yeah.
for the cars that have it. And
Yeah.
so
Yes.
anyway, it's so much more than that now. How
Yeah.
does it
Absolutely.
interface with my phone? Will the experience change with over the air updates?
Yeah. I definitely think that, that right there are like the top few things that you could think about as a consumer when you're shopping now. If, like we said, you're shopping in the new car market or even some used cars that are sold in addition with newer cars on that same lot, you may find one that's 2, 3 years that does have over the air updates. So
Right.
it just really depends on where you're shopping. But I think what we're calling out here is knowing that term, knowing that the vehicle, a connected vehicle, a vehicle that collects any type of data or it has any software in it, there is a potential opportunity to have over the air updates. And
Yeah. And if it's a recent enough new car, it could.
exactly. And so it's a mind shift is really the way I see it as a consumer because we're already used to going through updates. I mean, I remember now I'm an Apple
Yeah.
user. Okay, so
Huh.
I remember when the updates and this is years back, okay, when updates were like every now and then. They were not as frequent as they are now.
And you'd have to plug
And
into iTunes.
yes, you would have to, go through this little process to get the update. And it was like so inconvenient at the time. But now like that, we have gone through so many iterations of updates and how consumers respond and what we need in order to like successfully perform the update. It's just like, okay, we went through it. Did you get the newest update? Everybody's like, oh, yeah, I got the newest update. And we're noticing the little small changes to your point, Luke, of what that small update did. We never really know the magnitude on the back end. The developers know the magnitude
Right.
on the back end, right? It's like
Oh yeah.
this big release, and for us, we either notice it or we don't notice it. But it's
Mhm.
that same perspective now that you have in a vehicle because essentially it is a computer. Your phone is a computer. I mean, it has a processing center in it that takes data and then it outputs functions, and so it needs to be updated. So imagine not
Mhm.
updating your cell phone. How inconvenient is it going to be for you after a while if you have not performed that newest update? There are going to be things
Mhm.
happening to your vehicle that could be happening, but it's not happening because you didn't do the update. So it's that kind of mentality of that workflow, and now it's being brought into the shopping experience for cars. I mean, who
Yeah.
would have thought? That I would be talking about the same thing I would go to talk to Apple store about with my phone. We're gonna have that same similar conversation at the dealer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty wild. Not that many years ago, that would not have seemed like a likely comparison, but
Yeah.
um, but that is a good point to bring up. We sometimes have the question of um, how far ahead should one be looking when they're
Mm-hmm.
going looking for a car?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's, of course, I would get that question at the dealership a lot. or I should say, maybe not question, but that sentiment of just like, oh, I think I'll wait because there's going to be a new version coming up, or oh,
Hmm.
there's going to be an update to this.
Yep.
Um, and there's, certainly people are not wrong to think or feel that way. But we sometimes have the question of, you know, does a shopper need to be thinking two, three, four, 5 steps ahead,
Hmm.
and as opposed to just does it have what I want right now,
Right.
and will it hold up in the future?
Hmm.
So the the uh to flex my product specialist expertise, I would say the answer to that is I don't know, which is not the answer anyone wants, but I don't know. I can't see the future any more than anyone else can.
Hmm.
Um, and so how will tech hold up? How will our current right now tech hold if you were to buy a new car right this minute? Whether inexpensive or very expensive, whatever. If you were to buy a new car right this very minute, how will it hold up in 2, 3, 4, 5+ years? I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. But
I do want to say something to that though, Luke, because in our last
right,
episode with
I've more to say on it. But yeah,
no, no, I want to just make a small point to that. Will it hold
uh-huh.
up? When we had our last expert episode with Jonathan Rivers, we were
Yeah.
talking about design and how far technology has come.
Hmm.
And he brought it to our awareness that what we see right now, the level of technology at work in vehicles now, that has been a work in progress for the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, it's worked on for a long time leading up to it.
So,
Yeah.
so we kind of can say this is not something that they're just throwing in the vehicle. The technology is not just so happening to pop up in the car. The technology that we're seeing and the advancement we're seeing, it is going to hold up because it's been worked on for, years as far as functionality. Now, maintenance is a whole different conversation as to how, often you'll have to get it maintained. But I do want the audience to know that where you see vehicles today and their functionality when it comes to technology from our expert session, you should go back and listen to it. This is technology that has been worked on for the last 10 to 15 years. So
Exactly.
we're in a good place right now. I mean, his words exactly. We figured it out for right now. Now, the future, we don't know yet. But for right now, we figured it out.
Exactly. And so that was kind of more my point is that like in the future, when it's like stuff that starts getting worked on then, that's the unknown. So
Hmm.
what I would advise people is while I don't know exactly what the far out future will
Hmm.
have, well, hold, I would say for shopping now or shopping soon, I would advise look at what has the tech that serves your needs now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we live in the now. Ultimately, we live in the now, um, and I think each year there are going to be improvements on what is now,
Hmm.
right? What is right now will not be brand new, after it's brand new.
Yeah.
But I would say, how will it hold up? I don't know exactly, but probably pretty well because, like Jonathan Rivers said, it's worked on for so long that there's pretty good future proofing already in place for it. Um, and so I would say it's good to follow what serves your needs, right now because
Exactly.
that's where we are.
Yeah. And there's also the regulatory side to that question as well,
Yeah,
because now these features, it's not just about the features, it's how well they perform because they are tied to improving your safety as a driver. So
exactly.
these are systems that are constantly being tested, and they are now part of the 5-star rating when it comes to looking at vehicles and where they score during a ultimate test of a crash and a collision.
Yeah,
The Illinois Institute Highway Safety IIHS, they have already adjusted their safety criteria in 2024, making it harder for different manufacturers to even earn that top safety pick without strong ADAS integration. So if you're a certain brand, or because I've heard this from people in our community, about
Hmm.
the experience of ADAS. Well, it didn't really work that well. I didn't really like, the warnings, or it really didn't mimic what a normal routine for me would look like. That's why we
Hmm.
talked about that feedback as a consumer that you can give after you're experiencing these ADAS, like that letter that you got in the mail, Luke. And so,
I got one about my car. Yeah, please give us your
exactly.
feedback on your car.
Exactly. So even understanding that perspective to it as well, as a shopper, now you should be looking at the safety top pick, right, by the IIHS, but you're looking now not just at how well it looks, it's how well it performs with the technology. So
Yeah.
is the blind spot monitoring doing what it should be doing? Is the lane keep assist operating correctly? Because these are tied to reducing crashes and collisions on the road. So it's a, like we said, it's a mental shift as a consumer. When you're shopping for a vehicle, you're looking for that nice design. Okay, we know about the
Hmm.
design, but now you're also adding that technology layer to it, and it's a little bit more intentional than you think. So I think,
Yeah.
the regulatory bodies carry the heavy weight for you, right? They're making the manufacturers test, and it has to be audited. We talked about the AI being audited, make sure there's no bias in there. Like, they're doing all of the hard work for us as consumers, but there's also a layer to it about when we're shopping for
Hmm.
the kind of car that we want and the things that are important to us. Technology has to be a part of that shopping experience. And some great resources for you are these regulatory bodies. It's also, like Luke said, having that conversation and understanding the different features and the technologies that are available to you and which ones to ask for, making sure it's been updated. Has the car had an update? Has the car been stripped of its previous owner's information? I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about that. So, I mean, I never asked that question when I went to go buy a car at all. Did you strip the previous owner's data? Like, what?
Right. Yeah. Such a thing wouldn't even been a concern. And it's so important to bring this up, which I'm glad you did. And the IIHS is Insurance Institute of Highway Safety.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so the IIHS top safety pick has been a coveted title for a long time.
Hmm.
And what has gone into earning that has indeed changed. And now a lot of these modern higher tech safety features play a part in that. And so when people think of software updates, oh, is my device updated? Most people, I think, only ever think of that in terms of just their convenience or their entertainment, right? Like a phone. Is it
Yeah.
updated? Will I have all the latest features? Um, and people aren't necessarily looking at, while certainly newer updates can carry things like data privacy and security features,
Hmm.
we don't think of updating phones safety features. And
Yeah.
so, but that's why it's so important to talk about this in automotive, because when I mentioned previously, a really good thing to ask about when shopping for cars is how a new car will support over-the-air updates, and if a used car has gotten to its latest one. If I can, in most cases, assume it might not support over-the-air updates
Right.
anymore, depending on its age,
Hmm.
then um, is it updated to the latest one? It's not just does my infotainment screen look pretty.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
because software updates aren't just the infotainment screen, the thing that you on the touch screen you look at. It's also the ECU, which is the engine control unit or the electronic control unit, um, and the computers and sensors that govern, and the gyroscopes that govern traction and stability control. The firmware that the sensors use to report information on a blind spot
Hmm.
detection to the car, or a lane thing to a car, adaptive cruise control, right? All these kinds of things can be affected by software updates, and so um, that would be again to kind of give I like to give consumer tips whenever possible.
Hmm.
I feel like it's in my blood now from now, because I feel like it's a muscle memory I've developed over all these years. But um the it's that would kind of be my pro tip for this one is, in the same vein as before, when you ask about software updates, do clarify that you mean safety updates.
Oh, yeah.
Um do
Well, I
ask
think,
about the infotainment updates too. I mean, that's also
yeah.
part of your experience using the vehicle, but but having some tech literacy there can be very powerful. And make sure when you ask about software updates, especially clarify safety features.
Yeah, I definitely what we you were just talking about reminds me of sometimes when I'm on Instagram and I'm scrolling, I'll find this one person that said, "Hey, I know you guys all did your update, but did you know that this is now automatically turned on?" And
Mhm.
so what was just a simple upgrade or update now turns into something that could be, I wouldn't even say dangerous, but maybe it's something you don't want. And
Right. It could be an
so
inconvenience.
yeah, it could be that, or it could be privacy related. Now there's something that's collecting data, and so it is a it's very important that you empower yourself with tech literacy. It's very important because what you don't know, you just don't know. Right. And so you knowing more, you'll be able to ask more intentional conversations and questions. And like I said, you have regulatory bodies that are carrying the heavyweight for you. All you have to do is seek out the information. You have podcasts like this where we're
Mhm.
having these intentional conversations for you, maybe not thinking as the average person would, but there's one person that's going to inform everybody of just those small things they got to think about. And so I'm happy that we can serve as a resource in
Yeah.
doing that, and assisting you in that way. So making sure that you're asking those intentional questions. How does the system compare to others in the segment? So
Mhm.
did you even think about, even when you're shopping, you compare brands, right? Honda versus Ford, or whatever your flavor is, but
Yeah.
there's also in performance of technology, how do they compare? So
Exactly.
there's that question as well, and I'm pretty sure that's baked into that star rating that you get, because there's surveys that happens with the consumers, and all of that is fed into that rating that you can get. But making sure you're comparing tech too. Don't forget about the tech. And so, okay, we've talked about where safety tech is today, but where is it going? Here's what I see. This is what I see. Shopping for a car will feel more like buying a smartphone. And we just talked about that in the next
Mhm.
few years. You won't just be comparing horsepower, you'll be comparing software updates, update cycles. How long is it taking for the update to happen?
Yeah. How often do they happen?
How often are they happening? And then how long? Okay, everybody is familiar with the term downtime. We
Yep.
don't want downtime with technology.
I know.
So we are just getting into update cycles. That's not even a thing that people are thinking about right now. Okay, we did like the baby step of, okay, now we know the vehicle will experience updates. How is the update experience? Is it good? Does it take a long time? Do I have any downtime? Those questions now will start to become part of that feature checklist instead of a shopping
Excuse me.
checklist. And then you're talking about AI performance. What
Yeah.
are these
Yeah.
AI powered technologies? What's the performance? That might start to be the brand comparison versus what we were doing before as shoppers.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be. More cars are starting to add a different versions of AI in their vehicles. We actually had a very AI focused episode earlier, and so one thing that's one piece of common ground that shopping for cars and smartphones will be things like reading release notes for
Mhm.
for a software update. Like, oh, here's what's new. Here are bug fixes that was changed. And yeah, that information can be found. I know some vehicles. I assisted a customer a few days ago. Um, and their vehicle had a software upgrade available,
Mhm.
and for that vehicle, it tells you right on screen. Um it says you want to choose a time later to perform the update. You can choose. We chose just right now because I was there and I was helping them.
Right.
Um, and it said vehicle will not be usable for 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And then we said select OK, and then sure enough, about 18, 19 minutes later, update complete.
Hmm.
And of course, we didn't like make an attempt to start or drive the vehicle or anything, but yeah, so the vehicles will say like, oh, it can't be used, or some vehicles can partially be used. Um, my previous vehicle, when that one it was a 2021, and I was able to update that software by downloading a very special file and extracting it, putting that file onto an empty flash drive, and then putting the flash drive into the car's USB port. So a little bit more
Oh,
of
wow.
a process than clicking update and having over the air updates just do that thing. But again, in fairness, 2021
Correct,
car.
correct.
Um, and that car was able to be driven while the software update was going on.
Yeah.
And I did actually drive it while the software update was going on. So that can vary between certain cars. Um, and and like I said, safety features are a big one. It's more than just how much horsepower does it make or and things like that. Um, Updates and safety features can happen through those updates, and everyone's um, everyone's also looking for cleaner touchscreen interfaces. That's another big thing that I think a lot of automakers in recent years I've been very happy to see have actually recognized that a clean to kind of bring it back into like the cabin where the actual user is interacting with it. I've been really happy to see that automakers in recent years have kind of honed in on a clean, easy interface of the infotainment system inside as a safety feature, not just a convenience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because the easier that is to operate, the smoother the safer it is, honestly, while driving.
Yeah. It's I mean, when you dive into the conversation of updates, it really is, again, it's a mindset shift because if you are allowed to do updates over the air, which means over the air just means, there's no contact. You don't have to physically go anywhere. You don't that vehicle doesn't have to come in contact with anyone. And so
Yep,
really that
correct.
that is a whole culture of not even having to visit the dealership anymore when you used to have to visit the dealership, right?
Yep.
So it's once again being aware that updates are possible, and then you get into the conversation, Luke, like where you were just talking about is the kinds of updates. So what kind of updates should a shopper actually be aware of and care about? And so you touched on some of the updates with the ADAS. They're not cosmetic, right? So these are things that actually improve the performance of your vehicle, maybe how it responds. Maybe it's an update with lane keeping precision or reducing
Mhm.
false alerts. I mean, how many of us get annoyed? And when I say us, I'm talking about the ones that have experience with ADAS because I've been driving
Yeah.
them for years. Some of the alerts can be annoying. That's been some of the feedback from consumers that have had these systems, or the lane keeping assist. It says it's altering you when you're not drifting. Maybe you don't think you're drifting, but maybe the camera caught you drifting. So it's like this, like
Right.
back and forth, right? But there's updates, right? Developers are on the back end wanting to improve those technologies based
Mhm.
on your feedback and hopefully real time, collection. They have these updates and they want to make it easier for you. It's just like your cell phone. Apple doesn't want you, or Android doesn't want you to have to go to their store every single time you need an update. They want to make
Yeah.
it as seamless as possible so that you can have the best experience with that product. The vehicle is the same way. These over there updates, they will become even more meticulous in the things that they perform because they want you to have a seamless experience with the vehicle. So now we're
Exactly.
talking about navigation updates, right? That can be tied to dealership visits. I've had plenty of vehicles communicate with me. It's time for an oil change. Would you like me to contact service for you? Matter of fact, my Kia did that multiple times, and sometimes I get so caught up in my day, I'm not thinking about an oil change. So that's very
Mhm.
convenient to have that type of communication. But if I don't perform those updates and keep it, maintained, really is what
Right.
it is, then you're not going to experience, that system in its best functionality. You may get the version older than that. Because my phone now, it needs an update. And there are things that I'm hearing others that have performed the update, they're able to do, I'm not able to do yet. So what does that make me do? Get home and get that update done, right?
Yep. Exactly. That's and it's car companies really have really leaned into that. Like when you said it's convenience.
Yes.
The greatest thing that that any brand can sell is convenience.
Yes.
And so when when automakers now see that they can, get new features and new updates to their customers like that and not have to schedule in-person visits all the time, they're like, "Oh, yes, on that."
Yeah.
Because that is more time and resources that they can, devote to other things.
That's right.
Um and the and just as a kind of a touch point, just to I'll be brief about this because we have an entire episode about this, but cybersecurity comes up
Oh
right
yeah.
when there's updates and new features. You did touch on it a second ago. Is there something that's collecting data? We have a whole episode. We were very fortunate to actually have an industry expert in cybersecurity
Hmm.
that spoke with us about that. Um, and so I would also just advise that if you're looking for a car, new or used, either one, um, do check to see whether or not it has over-the-air updates, if it has what its data collecting, behavior is. And again, we have an episode that deep dives on that as well.
Oh yeah. Well, and then you can get into the one of the controversial topics, and it's some of the brands are piloting subscription-based features. Now, you may
Yeah.
come off the dealer from the dealer and have all of these great features, and they will go over this with you, but some of those might be on a subscription base, and maybe that subscription expires at a certain time, and
And one day you wake up and
that's it. And you're like, what's happening? And here it is. Now the dealership is kind of having to deal with those conversations with the customers about why is this not happening, or how come I didn't know about this? And maybe they were informed of it. I mean, at the time of purchasing a vehicle, or even that whole process, it's like you're just trying to get out of there and get moving on with the rest of the things that you have to get done. But when you think about it, you want to know what kind of subscriptions are at work in the vehicle right now. That is a question that
yeah.
you want to ask when you're shopping for vehicles, especially newer vehicles, or maybe a vehicle that's 2 to 3 years, younger than the year we're in at right now, 2025. So I would say I would be asking those questions about subscription-based features, and it might even be, especially like in the used car market, maybe the subscription is up, but you want it. So then you can resubscribe, to those services. So
Yeah.
it's really all about you being knowledgeable about really what's in the vehicle, and being aware of that, because those I'm pretty sure those features and that subscription will come with some kind of update that will have to happen along the way. And so that's another update that you want to be knowledgeable about. Now, this is one that's very important. And I
Mhm.
know this because of something called range anxiety. When you think
Oh
about
yeah.
EVs, and this is one of the biggest hurdles when it comes to someone choosing whether they're going to purchase an EV or not, is how
Yep.
far can it go?
How
And
far can it take me?
yeah, how far can it take me? And for EVs and even hybrids, there are updates that happen for battery management systems that can improve the range, um,
Mhm.
the charging efficiency, how quickly can I get it charged, or even some thermal management, all of which affect your daily usability. So
Exactly.
even in that market, there are updates that are happening. And as a shopper, as a consumer of these products, you need to be aware of those.
Yep, exactly. And the other big thing with EVs that this is not something that we're used to with gas stations necessarily, because the infrastructure for gas station has been so intact and so set up for so long. But consider right along, and I touched on the importance of EV updates, that they can actually improve range and things like that. And
Yeah.
it is good to reiterate that because um another thing, consider that while the infrastructure for gas stations may well already just be perfectly in place, and some might be added here or there, or if maybe a brand decides to close one location, it might get replaced with another gas station because
Yeah.
it's already got the lines, it's already got the hookups there. Still, the infrastructure is pretty much there. But what infrastructure is still growing? The EV charging infrastructure.
Mhm.
How we talk about navigation updates, how important do you think it'll be for your navigation system to be updated with current EV charging
Oh,
locations?
yes.
Think about how much the locations of EV charging stations could change in the matter of a few months.
Exactly.
It could be
Exactly.
enormous.
Yeah.
And this is not unique to Tesla supercharging. In fact, it's probably more applicable outside of Tesla supercharging because of all the other brands, ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America. There's many that operate EV public charging stations. That navigation data will that navigation data is going to constantly be changing. So
Yes.
having an EV stay up to date is especially important. And then I mean, a lot of EVs they truly feel about two steps removed from a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and because when they're sitting still, they make about as much noise as one.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, let's consider that in addition to the range benefits, thermal management of the battery, and everything like that, navigation data, so that you're looking for an updated list of chargers.
Yeah.
That could be enormously important. And it's also the exciting thing about ADAS is updates to EVs actually are able to influence the ADAS features even more than they are in gas engine cars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because everything about the powertrain can be addressed in software.
Yeah.
And almost everything can be addressed in software in EVs, whereas a gas engine car, at some point, you're still on a mechanical,
Right.
moving engine and the transmission. Um, so updates to an EV can actually make even bigger differences in how, um, we talk about lane keep assistant, blind spot monitoring are calibrated, but what about like I kind of consider it like the granddaddy of all of them, which is forward collision automatic braking where
Mm-hmm.
if it comes down to it and that car just needs to slam on the brakes to stop a
Yes.
collision all by itself.
Yeah.
I mean, a software update could potentially change the calibration of that. Features like that get like on that level, those usually don't see drastic updates like many does because it is such a cardinal safety feature that those are pretty well set from the factory, but calibrations can happen.
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
and software bugs can be worked out.
Yep.
That can happen, and that happens more with EVs. Not because EVs are less reliable, but because more of an EV's internals can be affected with software. And the reason I wanted to especially mention that was because we actually got a question from our listeners about that exact thing. Um, we after talking about our brand comparison last week and what safety features come on which, and we touched on the on how that can be affected with software updates. Um, but that's why, like I said, getting into shopping for a car and what that means for when you're buying, that's what we want to dig into here. So we
Mm-hmm.
had people ask us, that with software updates of even affecting things like the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety's IIHS's top safety pick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that can also be the subject of recalls if there's a fix that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got a question from our listeners, which is, what happens if you ignore an AI related system in my car, a recall for an AI related system in the car, especially if it's tied to ADAS? Like if there's a recall on an ADAS feature, um, what happens? And
Mm-hmm.
what if you just, I haven't gotten in an accident yet. I can just, or I don't have time. I can just keep going. Um, to sum it up, don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
I say kindly and lovingly, but also kind of sternly, don't do that.
Yeah.
Let that my final product specialist tip that I would impart to everyone is, um, don't ignore safety recalls.
Please don't.
It's of any kind. I mean, if it's a safety recall, especially with like potential of like an engine overheating, like something mechanical. Modern cars don't really run into that very often, but if it's something like that, that's a no-brainer. But again, changing times, right? It's a total mind shift. You bring up mind shift. This is exactly that. A
Yep.
recall now could mean something different than it did years ago.
That's right.
And so don't ever ignore that. It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyways. For your own safety,
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't ignore a recall.
Mm-hmm.
A quick thought for most people, they don't want to go and do it if it's like, oh, well, nothing's been going wrong so far, and I don't have time. Find time. There's got to be a way there. I mean, find time to have a safety recall addressed, and automakers will be very specific about it being a safety recall
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
because not every recall falls under safety, and we've had we've had episodes and even some of our training courses that
Mm-hmm.
actually went into recalls.
Mm-hmm.
Not every recall is a safety recall, but the ones that are, treat those with the utmost importance because it will happen for your own safety. What if that automatic emergency braking does need recalibration
Exactly.
to where, after cars have been released and have been used, the engineers and the automakers find that, oh, something about its calibration is not detecting a certain type of car or a certain shape in front of it that it
Mm-hmm.
should be detecting.
Mm-hmm.
Recall. That's just one example. There could be many others, but um, it impacts your safety. And the other big thing is it actually makes a difference for insurance because
Yeah.
insurance companies nowadays are, I mean, there's a reason IIHS is Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. It has to do with that. Insurance companies see what safety features cars have, how they're working, if recalls have been addressed. These are all things
Oh, yeah.
that they're keeping track of, so that for that adjusters and everything like that, that makes a difference. And when you go to apply for car insurance for a brand new car, what does it always ask you? Does it have this safety feature? Does it have this safety feature? All these things, and I'm not an insurance expert, and I also don't have any involvement in like parts or service specifically. Um, but insurance costs can change depending on if a vehicle has an open recall or not, and if God forbid an accident does happen, and it's found that a potent that an that an a a disregarded recall
Mm-hmm.
could have been at fault,
Mm-hmm.
and that will bite you and affect you in really bad ways right when you really really need it not to.
Yeah.
So that for our listeners we had a few listeners ask about that. What happens if you ignore it? I mean, a lot of stuff can happen. It's a lot of bad stuff. So treat safety recalls enormously because a lot of them can be software updates. It might not even take that much of your day,
Yeah.
but they do need to happen.
Yeah. And I think, as we think about all the things that we've talked about today, there's one consumer tip that I think sums up all of this because there are listeners in different places. Like we have
Mhm.
listeners that have never experienced any of these technologies, and then we have some that are experts at it. And so,
Yeah,
but overall, consumers will need to be more intentional with their questions. And not just intentional with your questions as of today, but also taking a little step further and saying what tech is going to be standard next year that's optional today, because there are a lot of optional technologies that are now standard. And so
exactly.
there are many ways that you can do that as a consumer. We've talked about, some of those really outlandish designs that you can see at CES. But once again, in that expert episode, Jonathan did a great job with explaining that some of those prototypes are put out to just even unveil some small features that you may find in the next vehicle. And so, and that is a fun way of keeping up to date. It's really fun to see the type of designs that the designers are thinking about and the different shapes that they're experimenting with. And so that's a fun way of keeping up. But you also have the regulatory side of things. They're talking about these conversations around safety and trying to reduce the amount of distracted driving that we're seeing on the road. And so they're tying some of these conversations with technology advancements that are happening, standardizing technology. So you can even keep up to date with those efforts in that way, but start to ask those questions of what standard, what tech could be standard next year that's optional today, and that will lead you down many different paths of information. And hopefully we are one of those resources and continue to be a resource, because let's be honest, who here has bought a car thinking, oh, I'll figure that tech out later? I don't need to do that right now. I'll figure it out later. We've all been there.
Oh
But in
yeah.
today's landscape, that delay could cost you in terms of safety, insurance discounts, or just your own sanity. How do I turn this alert down? How do I turn this off? And so
Right.
when it comes to ADAS and when it's becoming standard, it levels the playing field. So, but that also raises the stakes for you as a shopper. So it's not just about if your car has the tech, it's about if you as the driver know how to use it and how to trust it. And so
Yep.
for our listeners, if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to share it with someone, subscribe, leave us a comment, leave us a review, keep sending in your questions, and make sure you catch us on our next episode. And until then, drive safe.
Drive safely.